Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today I'm covering Kenny the Cat and Yeti Krabs. Well, aren't these quite the forgettable pair from season 9? Even though they do have the similarity of some random creature coming down to the Krusty Krab, kind of funny. I don't think I have much else I can say in this intro outside of that, so as always, thank you all for taking the time to watch today's video. I appreciate every single one of you, and now let's just get right into it. Kenny the Cat is bizarre. Like, it is such an odd, borderline out of place episode. I wouldn't say it's bizarre to the point of an episode like Cuddly Hugs, which was slightly disturbing on top of being weird as hell, but there's certainly an uncanny quality to this episode. And I'm not saying all of this in a negative way, like, I have no problems about this show getting weird. See all of the gushing I did about episodes like Squid's Visit, Planet of the Jellyfish, Spongehenge, and Squidward and Clarinet Land for having exactly that quality, but there are times where weird doesn't work, and I think this episode is one of them. The first reason why I think this is because although this episode certainly brings the weird vibes, it doesn't have the plot to back it up. In a way, it's like Spongehenge in this regard, but also entirely different because that episode really had a problem with its comedy, whereas this episode, my issues with its plot are more about the content. I mean, the whole idea is that SpongeBob is obsessed with this cat who is supposedly holding his breath for days at a time. That's not interesting to me. First of all, we already have Sandy, so we don't need more air-breathing mammals underwater. Like, the whole thing is that Sandy is one of one, so why are we doing this? But more importantly, this plot also is one of my least favorite kinds, where a character is desperately trying to keep a lie alive. I believe I mentioned this during my review of Grandpappy the Pirate, but I just don't like these types of plots. The conclusion is foregone, the truth will be revealed, and it'll just be borderline to actual secondhand embarrassment until and when we reach that point. Not fun for me. And then I guess one other small thing about this episode that I don't like is Kenny's design. It's just very off-putting for me. I do like his voice though. Biz Markie was a great choice here. And thankfully, there are other elements included in this episode that keep my interest, which helps things immensely. But let me just start talking about the content of the episode now, and I'll just bring those elements up as I go. We begin with SpongeBob trying to emulate his idol/obsession by holding his breath. Man, when I was a kid, I was always scared to push myself doing that kind of thing because what if I passed out? This is also why I hate cardio exercise. But anyway, SpongeBob does end up losing consciousness, and I like how Mr. Krabs uses the secret formula as a smelling salt. Also, the way Mr. Krabs hasn't noticed anything about Kenny the Cat's rise to fame is so funny and relatable. I'm just like him in that way. I don't see any of that stuff even though I am online. The internet is so sectioned off into its own corners these days that there are few global sensations anymore. Alright, I'll stop with the tangents now, probably. Okay. But also, Mr. Krabs only recognizing Kenny when SpongeBob brings up how Kenny is on all the new $50 bills. I know what you are, Mr. Krabs. I'm facetiously insinuating that he's autistic, to be clear. And I guess while I'm here, I'm going to state that this episode only strengthens my claim as SpongeBob is ADHD because, I mean, come on. Latest media obsession. He's hyperfixating, brah. Again, I'm halfway joking. I do like that this episode has SpongeBob being a weird little dude, so freakishly obsessed with this guy as the minutes go on. Kind of reminds me of Gary's new toy, and then especially of I'm Your Biggest Fanatic. Anywho, Mr. Krabs tasks SpongeBob to get Kenny and his fans to visit the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob goes over to Sandy's place without a water helmet, and after being like, I'm fine, immediately shrivels up like this is tea at the Treat 'em. Hilarious. Turns out SpongeBob went to Sandy's place to ask after Kenny the Cat, in which he makes some rather, speciesist insinuations. See, this is a much better way to make these pseudo-in-universe bigoted jokes than the bullshit that was prevalent in Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy. That was just actual xenophobia portrayed entirely unpleasantly. Also, Sandy gets to snap back here versus in that episode where she couldn't. Anyway, I really like Sandy in this episode. I love her little rant against cats. We cut to SpongeBob and Patrick camping out in downtown Bikini Bottom, waiting for Kenny the Cat, 14 hours early. I suppose I should no longer be surprised by these sudden random Patrick appearances, but I still am. Just wasn't really thinking he was going to be in this episode at all. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that he wasn't the one egging SpongeBob on to do weird stuff in the name of being fans of Kenny the Cat, as that is typically the dynamic between the two best friends. But nah, that was all SpongeBob, and I love it. I love how Patrick gets freaked out by the obsession, too. The next morning, Kenny the Cat finally shows up, and I realize here how kind of bored I am. Like, yes, there have been funny moments here and there, but I'm not feeling engaged by the plot. Like, SpongeBob meets Kenny very easily here. There's nothing to keep me interested. He also gets Kenny to come to the Krusty Krab very easily, so no conflict or anything to keep me interested. Now, I will say I didn't expect SpongeBob to learn Kenny's secret so quickly, and his dramatic heartbreak is pretty funny to me. Reminds me of Krabby Land. Kenny gives SpongeBob a whole sob story about how his scamming is actually a good thing, and SpongeBob agrees to keep his secret. I love how ticked off SpongeBob obviously is here, though. And then Sandy shows up, and I love how she clearly knows that Kenny is full of shit, and so her targeted, innocent observations of how Kenny cannot be doing what he says he's doing is too much, and forces him to reveal his secret in front of everyone. And I like how SpongeBob still tries to help Kenny out by giving him an idea to be special when he gets back to the surface. That's my kind, MC. And I like the last line that implies that Sandy is confused about if cats or dogs are the scammers of the surface world. Kind of a funny way of bringing back the same speciesism that SpongeBob showed earlier. Kenny the cat was okay. It was kind of boring, and it went by very quickly and never felt like it really got started, but there were some good jokes scattered throughout the episode, and I'd say I'd still somewhat enjoyed myself, so this episode is definitely going to be on the border between the okay and good tier, but the question is which tier it will go in? Well, I think there was just enough good stuff here to make it lean towards the latter, which is why I'm putting this episode in my good tier, where it comes in with a score of 7 out of 10. Raise your hand if you remember Yeti Krabs. Come on, don't be shy, put those hands up. Alright, now put them down, I know you're lying. Okay, maybe Yeti Krabs isn't that forgettable, but it's definitely up there when it comes to the most forgettable episodes of this show. But I will say that I remember the premiere of this one, right up against the premiere of the second movie, which I'll be reviewing very soon, now that I think about it. Oh boy. Alright, well, anyway, if it tells you anything, I had to rewatch this episode again just to make a script suitable for a YouTube video, because the original written review of this episode is quite possibly my shortest ever. Like, it's bad. And ignoring outside events that made it to be so, this is also because there's really not jack or shit to talk about with regard to this episode. But by golly, I'm gonna try. The first scene of Yeti Krabs is a wonderful example of the dynamic between Squidward and Mr. Krabs. Maybe it's not them at their best ever, but it's still very good, especially with Mr. Krabs calling Squidward by his last name. Like, no one else does that kind of thing in this show, and it fits here almost as well as his typical Mr. Squidward. I also like how the episode opens with Squidward sleeping with a copy of Boredom Weekly on his face. I love tiny visual jokes like that. It's like a bonus treat for watching. Anywho, Mr. Krabs is mad that Squidward is slacking off, and I like this little dialogue where he spells out everything he says, literally. Just the back and forth between Mr. Krabs and Squidward here is great. Also, I can't believe that Mambo Fantastico returned in this scene when SpongeBob appears. How nostalgic. That track is linked in the description if you're not sure what I'm referring to. While Squidward does not see any reason to do anything given that the restaurant is empty, SpongeBob is of course his hard-working, overexploited self, and this is, as always, a fun contrast to watch. And SpongeBob's initiative turns out to be troubling for Mr. Krabs, as whenever Mr. Krabs tries to assign a task to Squidward, SpongeBob has already done it. And this is enjoyable to watch, but it is also my first problem with this episode. What we're seeing right now is far more interesting than the direction the episode veers in, and so the actual Yeti Krab is not at all necessary for the episode. It's a bit of bizarreness that is greater befitting of an episode of regular show than SpongeBob SquarePants. Not that the show doesn't do bizarre, I mean, literally the previous episode was bizarre, but just the way it was utilized here doesn't feel quite right to me. I don't think that Mr. Krabs making up a story about a Yeti Krab who eats bad employees like this is Graveyard Shift really fits for this episode, and I think it does the episode a disservice. Anyway, I'm getting slightly ahead of myself. I love Squidward's little quip about how cleaning the gum from the underside of the tables would be a health code violation, and then I'm choosing to believe that SpongeBob asking if he could take the giant ball of bubblegum to Patrick was a reference to the gift of gum. And it's a little after this that Mr. Krabs finally comes up with his story about the Yeti Krab, which he tells specifically because he wants to get a full day's work out of Squidward. I gotta say, I do kind of love the shenanigans that the Krusty crew get up to when business is slow. Mr. Krabs freaks poor SpongeBob out with his story of the Yeti Krab, saying that even though he's a hard worker, he won't be safe because he's too close to a bad worker. I really could get on a soapbox tangent about capitalism right now, but I won't. Not because I want to spare y'all, but because I just don't feel like it today. Mr. Krabs then suddenly and totally not suspiciously says that he needs to step out, leaving SpongeBob, Squidward, and a pile of dirty laundry he's tasked them with cleaning. Squidward, unsurprisingly, doesn't believe the story at all and refuses to do any extra work, while SpongeBob is intensely worried. And perhaps for good reason, too, because by sheer coincidence, an actual Yeti crab descends on Bikini Bottom, hungry as hell, and enticed by the scent of Krabby Patties. And also unsurprisingly, Squidward thinks that this is Mr. Krabs in a Yeti costume. And I don't know, for a while all of this is kinda dull. Squidward's unflappability here is at least somewhat entertaining, and I do love how the Yeti Crab is so clearly like, what the F are you doing, when SpongeBob is trying to fix up the restaurant. But yeah, kinda dull. I think the problem is that it doesn't lean enough into the chaos of a feral Yeti appearing at the Krusty Krab, and everything just feels slow. Eventually, SpongeBob runs out of things to do in the restaurant, and so thinks that the Yeti Crab is going to eat him for being lazy. I like how Squidward has enough and decides to stand up for SpongeBob, kind of. Yeah, it's also for his own self-gratification since SpongeBob's worrying is bothering him, but it's also kind of wholesome, so let me have this. So Squidward dresses up as a Yeti Crab and starts fighting the Yeti Crab since he thinks it's just a costume, until the real Mr. Krabs walks in and he realizes that this Yeti Crab is, in fact, real. This realization was long awaited and very funny. Thankfully, SpongeBob realizes what's really going on and cooks up some patties for the Yeti Crab, averting disaster. Which brings us right back to the status quo of Squidward refusing to do these random tasks Mr. Krabs assigns and SpongeBob doing them anyway. Well, all's well that ends well, as they say. Yeti Krabs was better than I thought it was going to be after a certain point. I think the episode started and ended well, but there was just that rough patch in the middle that made my feelings about this episode rather uncertain. I also still stand by my assertion that the Yeti Crab wasn't necessarily needed for the episode, but I mean, it was the plot that was chosen, so it is what it is. I guess I don't have a lot to say about this one. It's generally enjoyable, not the funniest, not the most engaging, but it gets the job done. And so this episode is being put in my good tier, where it comes in with a score 7.6 out of 10. As always, I'll be ending this video with some closing thoughts of mine, but I'm not sure I really have any, at all. I mean, I really had to, revamp the reviews for both of these episodes because of how short they originally were, and I think that stole all the closing thoughts I could have had right out of my brain, because obviously I never had many thoughts about either of these episodes in the first place. They're both empty in that way, I guess. I will say I was kind of pleasantly surprised that they both ended up being put in my good tier, considering how nothing I feel about them even now, right after rewatching them, but they were enjoyable enough ventures. Just maybe let's not have too many episodes like these, huh? Alright, well, that's basically all I've got for y'all today, so I'm gonna go ahead and close things out here, and I'll see y'all in the next review.